Afternoon. I'm Kerry Kazuki, the Director of Management Consulting at 501 Commons, and joining me today is Jan Glick of Jan Glick and Associates. We're here today just having a discussion about themes that are occurring within the nonprofit sector in preparation for an upcoming presentation that we're going to be hosting called Path Forward for Financially Stressed Nonprofits. Jan, I just had a few questions for you around this topic. I'm just wondering what you're seeing with nonprofits during this time of COVID around their operations. Do you see them making operational changes since COVID hit?
Yeah, thanks, Kerry. A lot of what we've seen has been, of course, a tremendous movement of nonprofit programs where possible to be web-based program, online programming. And so it's kept services to the community for many organizations. But unfortunately, we've also seen organizations, and I'll give some examples of childcare providers, which has been very much in the news, and other organizations which are, have to be place-based services that have had to make tremendous cuts in their staffing and their programs. And those sorts of programs have faced issues of survival. And soon after the pandemic hit back in February and March, there started to be a lot of national surveying of nonprofits around their financial viability. And so we know the sector is very stressed financially. And so some of the other changes that are happening, aside from program and staffing cuts in quite a large number of organizations, and we'll cover that national research in the workshop, are things like arts organizations, for example, that have found a way to deliver some of that arts programming online because people can't meet in a physical auditorium or a theater. So the workshop will get into some of these, big changes that we've seen.
Okay, thanks. The other thing that I wonder about in your practice, Jan, are you seeing organizations altering their programmatic approaches in response to COVID or in response to new budgetary realities? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, we've seen, in addition to cuts, significant cuts across many nonprofit sectors, we've seen a lot of adaptability where possible, and nonprofits have been nimble, trying to adapt to what could be done during a pandemic, and conversely, some program scale backs or they couldn't be done.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I'm also wondering, what is your sense of what nonprofit leaders feel about the future, or say the next 12 months, or all of 2021 for that matter? Is there a sense of hope in general, Jan?
I would describe it as a sector that has always been a can-do, right? Has always risen to the challenge. And I think people are having a very hard time looking ahead beyond the pandemic. It's wonderful. We're having this workshop at a time when the vaccine is out, and there is some sort of hope on the horizon, but we still don't know exactly how long it's going to be in 2021 till things are, for lack of a better way to say this, back to normal, if they'll ever be back to normal. And so we have not seen nonprofit leaders yet quite willing to sort of take a stand and say, I think we should plan for this particular scenario. And this workshop starts to sort of voice that question, right? If you look ahead, what are some of the options? But we're still seeing people focused on today's challenges and tomorrow's challenges and next week's challenges, much more so than maybe the 2022 challenges. So I think a transitional year, and the timing of these workshops is maybe a pretty good timing, as we're hopefully, and I say this just hopefully, perhaps more than halfway through the pandemic cycle. Perhaps we're sort of in the second half, I hope.
Yeah, sure. And Jan, I just had one last question while I've got you. If you were to put yourself in the shoes of a nonprofit leader, in thinking about attending this this session, what do you think you would get out of it? What would you like to? What do you think is going to be the outcome for you as a nonprofit leader?
So I think I would say this, Carrie. I think it would be a pretty good time for nonprofit leaders to think about, what I started doing during COVID, and might we keep doing that after COVID? What we stopped doing, what we changed during COVID, and will we continue to keep that change or bring that thing back after COVID? Are there really difficult decisions that we made during COVID we want to reverse after, or do we have to make even more difficult decisions after? So
Right.
I think it's not quite a planning session, but I think it's a session around what are the outside the box possibilities, what are some of the difficult decisions that might be available for nonprofit leaders.
Sure. Well, great, Jan. It's been great catching up with you, and looking forward to exploring more of this at the workshop.
Thanks, Carrie.